Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. With us today, we've got Dr. Gary Vasey, Managing Partner at ComTech Advisory, and Richard Williamson, Founder and CEO at Gen 10, to discuss business continuity, tighter collaboration and controls in a post-COVID world. So I'll hand you over now to Dr. Gary Vasey from ComTech Advisory.
Thanks, Cassie. I'm just going to sort of set this up by just beginning to take a look at the general background facing commodity companies these days. And I think the key term is change. It's all change. And there are many challenges as a result of all of the changes that we're seeing in the industry. So some of the things that I think you will be facing is the need for greater agility because of the rapidly changing business environments and priorities. We're seeing all kinds of things changing, from trade wars, tariffs, quotas, breakdown of supply chains because of the COVID thing. So there's a lot of change in the environment, and along with regulatory stuff as well. We're also seeing that traders are generally making smaller trading margins, and profitability is under scrutiny. They're looking to therefore be much faster, more costly, with more automation, more collaboration, things you'll be hearing a little bit more about later on, I suspect. I think, as everybody here knows, there's more data everywhere of all types: satellite data, sound data. We've heard of all kinds of sound files being used in the commodities industry by people like Cargill, listening to fish feeding and this kind of thing, combined with artificial intelligence. But all of us are confronting this situation where there's much more data everywhere, and being able to access that data, parse that data, and more importantly, perhaps visualize it in a way that we can work with it has become very important. I did mention supply chains, but obviously with smaller trading margins, trying to optimize and improve supply chains for efficiency is going to help with profitability, as is optimizing assets and optimizing asset value with improved operational performance, whether that asset be a generator or even a transporter of some kind. Mentioned also the increased geopolitical risks and uncertainty that we're all facing as countries engage in trade wars, EU, USA, China, all of those kind of things that we're very familiar with, increase the geopolitical risks and increase our uncertainty. We've got regulations to deal with, although having said that, many of the regulations are now behind us and we're dealing with second and third round type regulations. But nonetheless, 2020 did see the introduction of low sulfur fuels in the marine environment, for example. And there is an increased emphasis on managing all forms of risk, whether it be market price risk, credit risk, legal risk, operational risk, so on and so forth. And just recently, we're starting to read quite a lot of concerns about trade finance availability as some of the banks pull out because they haven't made any money. And in some instances, because activist investors are trying to ensure that finance doesn't reach certain types of companies. And this has resulted in a number of trends that we see as an analyst firm looking at the industry, things like digitization and automation to help reduce costs and increase efficiencies. The search for lower cost and more agile solutions that allow people to get into a new solution on a more cost-effective basis, and then basically react to these changing business environments faster. More emphasis on data and extracting the business opportunity and value from that data. And this includes things like machine learning and artificial intelligence, as well as visualization. The disaggregation of older monolithic solutions, and also disaggregation of older business processes. So trying to see where you can break down business processes to be more efficient, and trying to introduce more agility and lower cost by moving away from these massive, very costly implementations of very large footprint solutions, breaking the problem down into smaller areas that are addressable with more sleek, slim and agile solutions, and knitting them together in a framework, which of course is often in the cloud. A much increased emphasis on asset optimization and asset optimization tools. As we've seen blockchain and other initiatives like that, it's also, I think, influenced the movement towards using consortia and working together looking for ways to work together to enhance trust and collaboration between parties that are involved in a particular part of the industry. Much more focus on supply chains, and alternate sourcing has become something that people need to be doing. A significant increase on focus on risk management, often driven by stakeholders to the business, like your investment bank or shareholders, that kind of thing, who are looking to make sure that you are managing your business efficiently and effectiveness with a good handle on all of the risks facing it. And then a need to start looking for innovative financing, and we're hearing things around PPAs and selling of credits and being able to finance things in innovative and new ways without actually having to go necessarily to the bank, sometimes involving insurance companies and that kind of thing. So there we all were, beginning of 2020, quite innocently dealing with all of these trade wars, tariffs, barriers, new regulations, big data, digitization, and all of a sudden this virus came along and all kinds of countries started to shut down their borders, shut down businesses, move people out of office environments into the home environment. And all of a sudden, a lot of people that were using CTRMs and ETRMs discovered that the current solution was actually less than perfect when it came to managing that lockdown and its impact, especially in terms of business continuity. Heard of examples where all the users were relying on desktop machines in the office and there were no laptops and no software on laptops for them to take home. In one instance, all of the key documents came to the company through the fax machine, which was located in an office that nobody could get to. So this was a really big thing, and I think it still is a big thing and could potentially in the fall even get worse. We're also seeing that this has had a knock-on effect whereby people are more willing to look at working from home, and this may be something that continues irrespective of COVID-19. And some of the impacts are obviously things like unable to support secure and reliable remote access for the workforce, for partners, and for anybody else that needs access into those computing systems and to see data, screens, reports, that kind of thing. Inability to basically support the automation of workflow and approvals and flow of documentation. So basically disrupted workflow because it's not automated, and people can't talk to one another because they're no longer sat next to each other. And being able to see what your colleagues are up to and what they've done isn't now just walk around the screen and look over your colleague's shoulder to see what they're doing, but you're going to have to find that in the system in terms of a sort of checklist of what happened to that particular transaction and the documentation associated with it. Unable to aid users, identify new risks in the supply chain, looking for alternate sourcing and all those other operational issues. Unable to support remote teamwork, and harder to operate proper, harder to get proper vendor support from a particular vendor if you're on a monolithic solution in particular. That has been a big issue. And of course, those issues are all magnified for commodities where the supply chain is both long and complex and open to significant disruption, things like ores and certain ags and softs, and even some of the energy products like crude oil and refined products, etc. So I think that what we're seeing in the industry right now is certainly talking to people involved in the business this last few months as analysts, we're seeing that rather than people stop looking for new solutions and sort of hunker down and not spend any money, quite the reverse. We're seeing a lot of companies come out and start looking at solutions, looking for alternate solutions, trying to review their options, and realizing that COVID-19 and this whole set of issues has really been the tipping point in terms of needing to modernize and update these solutions that they have in-house. They're much more concerned with business continuity and the new risks faced by the business, and looking at new solutions, particularly if they're in the cloud, cost-effective, quick to implement, etc., is certainly something that we're seeing people doing, and in fact pulling the trigger, and deals are being done. Sometimes this is part of an overall digitalization project, and CTRM is obviously a key part of that kind of a project, and digitization or digitalization projects we're seeing in some instances being sped up and the investment accelerated. Again, cloud and architecture are key aspects to digitalization projects, along with automation and workflow. So what we're seeing in terms of digitalization in commodities isn't what we've seen in some other industries where it's about replacing people with automation. It's more, I think we're a little bit further behind some of the other industries, so it's more about supporting people with automation and workflow, enabling them to do their job more efficiently, more effectively, and in the process, perhaps eliminating some back office and administrative type jobs to save costs. And I think the impetus for all of this digitalization is all of the issues that we've been talking about, combined with this massive push around remote working and business continuity, and the fears and concerns that businesses have about being able to continue doing their business, find alternative sources, manage the risk in supply chains, and have an effective workforce that's able to collaborate and work effectively from a home environment. The problem is, though, is can you actually replace or implement a solution like a CTRM, which is mission critical, in a lockdown and do it remotely? And the answer to that question is, well, replacing a solution is one of those things that has never been very easy, particularly if it's core and key part of the company. And there's been a massive investment involved in implementing that particular solution. It's taken a long time, the training of many people, a lot of people are invested in it. And it becomes very difficult, even under the worst circumstances, to make a justification to go ahead and go through that entire process again, with the risk that you'll spend that kind of money. But with the advent of new technologies and technical architectures and cloud, we see that the implementation of some of these CTRM, ETRM commodity management solutions can be done in significantly less time with less risk and less cost. And vendors have some innovative ways to approach implementation of these kinds of solutions, where it can be phased implementation, or you can do a proof of concept and follow that up with an actual implementation, having done some of the work in that proof of concept. So there are many ways that this can be tackled, and we are seeing that some of the newer vendors with this kind of architecture, this kind of technology, are able, as I say, to actually do this for not a fraction of the cost necessarily, but certainly a lot less money than in the past. And even under lockdown, we see that some of the vendors can go through the entire sales process and even implement the solution remotely. They'll offer you different structures as well. So the idea of a traditional license fee up front and support and maintenance has often gone in favor of a usage fee, which may be a pay-as-you-go structure, can be based on number of users, that kind of thing. It can be monthly, quarterly, annual usage fees. And you may not be facing a huge upfront capital cost for the software, but rather an ongoing operational expense with this model. We think that a lot of these modern solutions provide many of the features that we would expect people to be looking for under the environment that we're talking about. So features that can help you safely and securely operate your business, put in the controls under lockdown conditions with things like workflow approvals, document management, audit trailing, collaborative features, and much more. And we know from covering Gen 10 that it has successfully performed even several remote implementations during this period with some success as a result of its architecture, design, and overall approach, which fits many of the above bullet points. Richard, with that, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you go.
Thank you very much for that, Gary. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I mean, to move on from what Gary has just mentioned to you, I'll just take a minute to introduce Gen 10 for those that may not be aware of who we are. Gen 10, we provide E and CTRM platforms. Amongst other things, we're involved in marine insurance and traceability, sustainability initiatives, as well as some trade finance initiatives that are going on at present. It's all keeping us very busy. And I'm very thankful that we've been able to continue our business under these extraordinary circumstances. The bit that we're focusing on today around the commodity management, that is a product of ours we call ComOS, which is a multi-commodities platform. And we pitch that as it's out of the box and in the cloud, ready for you to use. As you can see, we're across a number of different asset classes, each with their own nuances as well as consistencies across the board as well. And we have proven implementations across the board. Again, you'll know what a CTRM typically covers, but just to give some context, this high-level overview of our ecosystem, it is sort of, front to back, whole trade life cycle stuff, from the contracts and the hedging through the operations, document management, inventory management, through to settlement, with integrated counterparty relationship management modules, and we bring all of that data together in a central control center to help you navigate your way around your business. We've then got a wrapper, this API data interface around this that gives additional access to further risk reporting, integration with your ERP systems, inventory reconciliation and compliance and things. So much of the usual suspects, but just to give you a high level overview of that functionality. But to bring it back to, what is the digital challenge? I mean, from our perspective, it's the digital challenge. And given the key trends that Gary so clearly laid out just now, we boiled it down in our context to A, how do we get people to work better together and now apart under COVID? And, the question we ask ourselves, can we do it faster, better, and cheaper? So what I will do in order to sort of validate our claims, which are bold claims, we'll answer the second question first, and we'll do that with a couple of short case studies. One is around a global implementation we did for Halcyon Agri, which we did in 6 months, and a case study focusing on one particular implementation in China under COVID conditions. This was a post-merger integration play where Halcyon, who's the owner of the Corrie-McColl group, together with Sinochem, that under the Corrie-McColl brand, they've recently made a number of acquisitions around the globe for their polymers and natural rubber activities. They wanted to put them all on the same system, and they wanted to do it all in 6 months. I just got a few moments here that Tony Fox, who was the project lead at Corrie-McColl, just to share their insights rather than hear it from myself.
Over the past 2 or 3 years, with the acquisition of with Worthbane, Centritrade, Allen Grant, Momentum Technologies and Calvin Terminals, they were a group of very independent and unconnected companies. So the task that was posed to me was to go and find a trading, logistics and finance system that will work across all of these companies to bring them together and to align them. And that's exactly what it started to do. With the contract entry in the trading scenario and the logistics and shipping, Gen 10 has streamlined and synergized our workflows and our office operations. And then the way that it works seamlessly with Microsoft and the vision to take care of the finance and the accounting side of it, everybody now works in exactly the same way. So yeah, it's just helped us to align a group of individual companies into Corrie-McColl, which is the group that we trade on. But when we said we wanted to roll out a new system globally in less than 6 months, I think people thought we were kind of mad. But with the help of the Gen 10 team, obviously our Microsoft partners as well, we managed to do that.
From Tony's kind words there, ultimately, from our side, we were able to unify their systems, unify their processes across the board and consolidate on a number of levels, not just consolidate reporting, consolidate everything in a very short period of time. I mean, I pass it over to Bruce, just to talk a little bit about, the challenges of post-merger integrations to put this result in context.
My name is Bruce Tozer and I work with Richard. I've been involved in quite a few post-merger implementations when I was in commodities and banking. And as we all know, what it says on the slides you're going to do and what you do are two very different things. So the ability to harmonize systems, get the costs under control very quickly, and get people working together in a new environment is critical. And if you can do that, it then unlocks the opportunity to go after the things which are more interesting, which is opening up the revenue growth. So this is a really critical capability in a time of change where consolidation is happening.
Thank you, Bruce. Then if we were to hone in on one of those implementations that we did, there were seven different companies that we needed to implement. And we did it all remotely, and that was all pre-COVID, actually. We had people in Amsterdam, in Germany, in Malaysia, Singapore, China, and over in the US working on this harmonization exercise. When it came to China's turn, unfortunately, that's when COVID kicked off. So whilst everybody was wondering what today was going to be like, the project was legitimately put on hold for a couple of weeks while they took stock. But a few weeks into the lockdown, we decided that we would have a crack at it, that we would try to implement for this team, give them a brand new system that would integrate their trading, logistics, and finance together. This 6-week exercise, just to give some weight to it, it included the interfacing with the ERP system. That's a two-way interface, so payments and credit limits come back from the accounting system as well. It included the migrating of the positions into the new system. And to top it off, we needed to translate the front end into Mandarin, as well as the documents and the email templates that we produce are in both languages, and in some cases with dual lingual capabilities. So yeah, the implementation and all of the training, all done remotely, courtesy of Zoom and Microsoft Teams, etc. And I would say that this was done back in March time. So we've had about 5 months into it. Going live is one thing, but what's the support like after? And I'm very pleased to say that the post-live support has been very light. It's averaged at 2.5 hours per week in post-live support there. So hopefully that's sort of validating why we're talking about the rest of this. The key success factors, when we set out to be a scalable cloud provider of E and CTRM management systems, we took a hard look of what would be the core ingredients to build that scale. And we identified 5 core areas. So it needed to be in the cloud in order to implement quickly and again, pre-COVID, etc. It's just COVID has made it exponentially more important, right? Get it in the cloud. It needs to be a cloud offering. It needs to be an engaging user experience. It needs to have user preferences. People need to be able to set up screens the way they need to based on what their role is, what their interests are, needing to make it configurable. I mean, the flexibility within systems, the workflow processes, whether you're in origination, distribution, or just back-to-back trading, they have different demands on a system. And so giving some configurability to these different commodities was essential. Connecting to your wider ecosystem, so whether that's your ERP systems, other platforms that we'll touch on shortly, another core element to getting something that does help people work better together. In the middle of all of this, really, it's the team and the culture that make it all work. Obviously, people are our most valued assets, and that team it's the Gen 10 team. It's the clients team with all of the end users bought into the benefits of why they're having to go through this change, and about setting that culture right, that it is about collaboration. It is about trying to work better together. So I've got a few slides here that will touch on some examples of those key ingredients to success. Cloud, you'll no doubt all be rather familiar with it, but to put it on record, the ability to deploy a new platform for a new client in an hour, you can do that with the cloud. As the company grows or as the company changes, they're only paying for the hardware, the infrastructure that they're using at the time. So all of your costs are managed much more directly. The whole IT infrastructure of resilience and redundancy and business continuity, the benefits of going with somebody like Amazon Web Services and their $5 billion global infrastructure is that there is so much that is taken off of your plate, and in many ways it's completely automated. So if a server falls down, others magically reappear without any disruption at the front end. We have load balancers to help with distributing the workhorses, etc. So, you know, cloud, an important part of it. The one that touches across the user engagement, the flexibility, configurability, and the team is the focus on what we're building is, what we have built, sorry, is this collaborative commodity management platform. How do we make the end users' lives easier at work? That's going to collect the data, which gives the reports that management then need to make their decisions. We focus very much on streamlining the nitty-gritty, giving people access to the information that they need, and making sure that the user experience follows the business processes. That it is a single source of truth is critical. As soon as you start moving to things offline and doing things outside of the system, you've already sort of lost control. The horses have left the barn. Obviously, once you start doing things offline, working from home, and with this distributed workforce post-COVID, these issues are exponentially worse. So on the access to data, our job was really to make the data consumable. And consumable is different to different people. There is a lot of data that we manage and we organize, whether it's market data, it's front, middle, back office data, it's laboratory or warehouse data, trying to organize that. The task is for us to make access to that data easy, and it's to make that data clear. The ability to interact with it as well, very important. And we figured that giving end users the options on how they consume that data is going to help everybody. So whether it's screens on the web, whether it's lists of stuff, whether you're looking at it via dashboards, more visual content, through to providing an API so that other systems can connect, can get access and consume that data. So your BI tool of choice. You know, we don't have to build our own BI tool. Why not integrate with Power BI or Tableau or ClickView, whatever it is that you're using for the rest of your business, even using good old Excel. It's been around for ages, but it's a very powerful BI tool. So giving them access to the data so that people are freer then to make the reports, make the analysis that they need, making it easier to consume and make their decisions from it. Examples such as inventory positions, analysis, traceability, around the APIs, again, from the ERP system interfaces through to leveraging functionality from third-party services such as vessel tracking, Google Maps, warehouse systems, lab services. Integrating them within the platform gives them a much richer context and ability to engage, interact in real time, but in a controlled environment. So underlying all of this is our workflow engine. We've productized over 20 years of our experience onto the platform. If there's one constant we've learned is its change. This engine enables us to configure operating procedures regardless of where you are in that supply chain, if you're originating, distributing, somewhere in the middle. And I would say, you know, for the business, having a unified process across that business that's digitized, it's critical. Obviously more so with work from home, etc. Through to hiring people. How do we hire people and get people starting to contribute to the bottom line? It's a huge challenge now, and it will be for some time. And all I can say is having that intuitive platform that walks the new recruits through the process will go quite some way to dealing with these new challenges. Learning curves reduced, checks and balances put in place, and that two-way trust between everybody concerned. So you have the standard collaboration tools. You know, everybody's got calendars and to-do lists, but again, bringing that within the realms of CTRM so that you're not doing some stuff outside and losing the plot. Giving them the tools to help them organize their job, be able to see what their colleagues are doing, even though they're in a different home office. These things all come to the fore as being important elements to this digital process. Reducing the risks of the errors and omissions, controls to prevent you doing some things until other things have happened, such as payment received or approval from a contract, etc., etc. Document management, I would say, I mean, what would you say, Bruce?
Well, the way we look at commodity trading and value chains, document management, contracts are absolutely the bedrock of everything that happens. It's the engine room. And if the data isn't available and organized around it, you're going to have real problems. And that's what we really set out to do. If you look at document and contract management and all the data which flows from it as the engine room, basically trade finance and finance to fund all of that is the fuel tank. And what we're seeing with the current crisis in commodity trade financiers and alternative providers are going to want a lot more real-time access to trading information and know that the operational risks are being managed. So this is where we see these things coming together very concretely in the current environment.
Yeah, and it's all around that operational risk and stuff, isn't it, Bruce? You know, the generating, distributing, and the tracing of these documents, that's what people do, and trying to make that in a structured format that people can trust is key. Through to the final end of invoicing and settlement, making sure the invoices you're paying and the invoices you're issuing are for the right amount. When you combine our pricing and valuation engine with the workflows and approval processes and the credit checks, the transparent audit trail that we provide, it gives you the control, it gives you the confidence in your billing process, you know, which is when everybody's working from home. It's otherwise a central source of stress. You know, the two-way interface with your accounting system, keeping things in sync, creating efficiencies, improves collaboration and communication, of course, completing that feedback loop between front, middle, and back office, making the management overall more effective. So to the bringing it all together for management, ultimately being able to monitor performance, having the confidence that your teams in whichever home office they're in have the processes and the tools to do their jobs effectively. This means you can rely more on the data and more on the reports that are sitting in front of you. If you think back to the CEO of Halcyon Agri, based in Singapore, that he can now see how all of his companies are doing whenever he wants to. It's a paradigm shift for him, and he'll tell you so himself. I would just say, you know, these screenshots that we got here, it's actually from a trade game that we did with KPMG to train their auditors in learning about, you know, the intricacies of commodity management and mark to markets, etc. This was a scenario where you had 16 competing companies trading Black Sea wheat, and they could just very visibly see how they were doing and how they were doing in comparison to their peers. And it's about that data management, it's about the management of the processes and the visualization of it, digesting of that data that makes it possible. So with the cloud and with the user experience and the configurability of the processes, being able to leverage other technologies to bring it into the fray, central to all of that is the team, and that's our team, it's the client's team in making these implementations successful. None of what we've discussed would have been possible without a dev team that knew what they were doing, an implementation team and a support network for our end users. They have deep domain expertise, and this is across commodity asset classes. It's across the front, middle, and back office, across supply chains, as well as across continents and cultures. And it's really important if you're going to, you know, you can have a product, but if you can't get it implemented, if you can't align the cultures and get everybody in sync, it's an uphill battle. And I'll just wrap that up. Just a couple of snippets from a couple of clients.
We also work with people who understood our business. I mean, across the board. I mean, we can talk to developers in Gen 10 who's doing our P&L. I mean, he understands the business. I don't have to translate the business for him to understand how to write the technology. And having access to people within the organisation like that is actually very important to us.
Yes, and that was courtesy of Barry Gould at the ComRisk in 2019. We did a panel with KPMG there.
The level of support and understanding and interaction that we've had with you guys has been absolutely fantastic.
So yes, I mean, just to wrap up on that and give some context, I mean, Bruce, do you have a couple of words to?
Yeah, this is a time where I think there's a lot of danger and a lot of anxiety, but it's also a time of change and positive change. 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, the sorts of implementations that we're able to do on our platform would have been unimaginable. So yes, I think the evidence is there that digitalization can be implemented remotely, successfully, and it can result in people working better together and much more cost effectively. So we look forward to working with more clients and your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Gary, for setting the scene for us on the trends. If we can pass it to you guys, if we have some questions here. So we have Gary mentioning trade finance availability is a problem. Richard, is that something technology can help with? I hope we went some ways to address that, with the trade finance being the fuel and the documentation and the provenance being the engine room. There are more demands on, you know, transparency, getting access to, being able to trust that your client's positions are what they say they are. Does it eliminate fraud? No. I think, to answer the question, is something technology can help with. You know, aside from what we were talking about on our CTRM platform, the blockchain trade finance platform we did for repos with Rabobank, Aon, and Concord, that is all about, it's not just about streamlining the process, but it's about the provenance of title. And I think technology applied sensibly can really provide some answers to the problem.
And I think it's going to be a combination of collaborative platforms which address collaboratively those issues, but also the companies that need to join those platforms, they need better internal processes to do so effectively. So it's at both levels we're seeing it, and we think that's really exciting.
Yeah. I mean, if I was to talk about that repo finance platform, at the moment that the bank approves the payment, makes the payment, that it is interfaced with both the client's own systems and the warehouse facility's own systems, that the title then transfers in those warehouse systems, and the document is produced to show that Rabo now have title to it. That provides a huge amount of comfort to the bank, a huge amount of comfort to the insurance company. And whilst, yes, people can still be fraudulent, with the right governance layers around it, you know, legal is a huge part of this solution as well. I think it can go quite some way to helping with the trade finance availability. That's in terms of getting the banks back into the business. If I was to look at bringing in new money, of course, technology, with all of the crowdsourcing initiatives that are taking place, provided you can get security on that title to the goods, that you can prove that they're there, I think technology really does provide a lot of liquidity for the new money coming in, wouldn't you say?
Potentially, but the test will be in how good the systems are, how good the data is, and how accurate it is.
Yeah.
But definitely new capital providers will be looking at this in a different way and bringing different skill sets and technologies to bear to make it possible to take those risks which traditional suppliers of finance are pulling back from.
Yeah. Anything you'd add from your side, Gary? I have another question here.
No, I think you guys covered it really, really well. As I said, we're also seeing some more innovative structures around trade finance involving, you know, some of the contracts that they're actually engaged in, or the assets, and finding ways to get them financed through things like PPAs and selling credits and that kind of thing. And then you've got to be able to prove that you can track all of those things as well, and demonstrate ownership. So it's back to all of the issues you guys just discussed.
Yeah, and tier traceability on top of that, and provenance as another risk factor.
Yeah.
You know, that's just more data which needs to be brought in and made operationally easy to use within a commodities environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think the verification, third-party verification, you know, I don't think technology is going to make the services of the likes of SGS and Intertech redundant. Of course, there'll be more work for them to go in and do the spot checks on inventories and things like that. Certainly, as you're trying to adopt new technology, it's not going to eliminate that, but they will have their own data and they will have their own information that they need to share. So technology is obviously going to play a huge part in that. And I think you should think about it not in terms of blockchain type solutions. You should think more about it in terms of standardization and APIs of how different systems can work together in the wider ecosystem. It won't replace people, but it'll make their jobs a bit more telling, I think. Question number 2, I thought digitization was about moving people away from Excel. Can you expand on those Excel reports you mentioned? Yes, of course. I mean, we did too when we started doing our own dashboards within the system, etc., providing all of the reporting, all of the information within the platform. And of course you can. We looked at the Excel stuff initially as sort of a safety blanket to help people transition through, but there are also some practical, in the field issues that it tackles as well. I mean, I should have prefaced this with saying Excel is not something for processing data, but if you wanted to consume data and put it into a report in a tool that you're familiar with, if you know how to do a pivot, or if you just know how to sort a column and freeze a pane or add your own comments to it, Excel is a very powerful tool. Just don't add information to it that should be used by other people. So very much at the end of the process. It shouldn't be at the beginning, and it certainly shouldn't be in the middle. So I hope that helps to address, think of the Excel reports as BI tools helping people to get access to and digest it. Now, we do say in terms of best practice, if you're looking at an Excel sheet, yes, someone could still accidentally delete a cell or do something with it. There is some user responsibility there, but I think it's the key really is around options. I think that obviously using our dashboards inside the system that has very easy interactivity, being able to drill down to the document in question, being able to then do something with your insight, we see that as the preferred method. But where you need to get our data and put it in context with other data that you have from elsewhere, I think that just sort of helps lubricate the flow of data through the ecosystem. If there are any other questions, I hope you found the last 50 minutes beneficial, that you've at least got some insights from some clients of ours and how we see the problem, how we try to address the challenges of COVID head on. But other than that, if you have any follow-on questions or anything, please don't hesitate to contact us. Whether that's from a sales perspective or really just on industry initiatives that we're trying to work on in standardizing some of these APIs and workflows across the industry. We'd be very happy to engage in those kind of conversations. And so on that note, thank you very much, Cassie, for organizing all of this. Thank you, everybody, for showing an interest and participating. And Gary, of course, thank you for your insights from an analyst perspective to get this all into context. Have a good rest of your day, everybody, and stay safe.